Welcome back. This is a follow-up to our webinar 2 weeks ago with Renee Cloud, where she started her large wall mural. That's part of her experience here in Rowe Galleries, Not Another Word. And we wanted to make sure that we all came back to see you again for two reasons. Number one, you need to see the finished work, right? I mean, you were there when it was started, so you need to be here to see it when it's complete. But also, we wanted to take this opportunity to maybe have kind of more of a conversation with Renee. I mean, it's, as you artists know, it's hard to kind of have a conversation about your work while you're producing it at the same time. But Renee did a great job. But now it would be nice to, kind of have her attention and talk to her about her work, get to know her a little bit as an artist, but also, Renee's got some really great experiences to share and maybe some good advice for students who are, thinking about or, have goals of kind of stepping into that role of professional artists. And I think also Renee can speak very well to being a professional artist in Charlotte specifically, and kind of what her day-to-day is, maybe some other resources out there that you can plug into. And so as Eric calls them, Renee's little gems of wisdom, we wanted to allow her to drop some of those today. So I'm going to turn it over to Renee, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the work itself at first, and then we can kind of get into more of your gems, as they're called.
It's so interesting to put all of this into a space and then leave it and come back, right? Like a lot of the times I'm experiencing galleries, usually I only get to go once, maybe twice if I'm lucky to see work in a space. So being able to revisit it more than once, like this is my second time back. So being able to revisit it multiple times as it exists in this space really allows me to get more familiar with the work. I would say that these pieces are kind of sketches. We can show. I would say that these pieces, the work in the show is, I would describe them as sketches in that they're ideas that I had that I've thought about for a while. And
am I the highlighted thing, Adam? Sorry. I'm going to spotlight my video. There we go. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. These are things that I've thought about for a while, and I decided to make them for this show. So even though I've sat with them for a very long time, I don't necessarily draw out my ideas. I kind of leave them as free-form concepts in my head so that I can retool them as much as I want before committing to any one format.
So this would be like you're still thinking about even a finished work as a variation on an idea that still might go.
Yeah. I would say this is a finished piece, but it's also informing future works that maybe would reflect on some orientation or version of this, with maybe repeating circular forms, or maybe even more mirrors, or maybe mirrors that say less, or mirrors that say something differently. They're done. It's done. This is a finished work, but I like to think of finished works as information for new finished works. So it's always being willing and ready to take from what you've learned from doing this thing and moving it into the next thing or the next idea that you kind of have. I like to think of things like being in this space and this piece and all these other pieces, especially this behemoth. I like to think of creating these pieces as adding tools to the toolbox.
Have Adam monitor the chat or in the Q&A. Okay.
I like to think of them as adding tools to my toolbox, right? I know how to hold a pen. I know how to hold a pencil. I know how to use a sander. These are all tools practically that an artist needs to be able to, practice their craft. But now I know how to thread lots of string through this washer and connect it on the other side. And I know I've learned about how, tension and gravity work together to create sort of visual effects with the thread. Like I'm learning all these practical things that maybe I won't use it again in this system or like in another system like this, but now I know how to do something like it if I ever get the idea in the future. And that's really, I think, critical to my outlook for making work for shows. Because again, I'm interested in solving the puzzle. I really like making work that solves the puzzle for me. So I'm always trying to figure out like, okay, I have this idea, but how am I going to make it exist in the physical world? Like, I have this idea where I want to layer text a bunch of times over and over and over and over and over again. Or I want to carve into paint on paper using a pen. Or, you know, just like playing with all these different thoughts that maybe they become individual pieces or maybe they become part of a bigger piece.
I like how you described it as like systems and puzzles, because I mean, the way I was taught to think about it is similar, where it's like strategies, systems, you know, so I think that's really informative that, you know, you're not projecting and thinking, okay, this is what I want to make. You've got this, you know, paradigm that you're working within with the text and these different elements, how to make it work visually, how to incorporate a lot of different things. And, you know, so that, you know, art historians don't like it when we call it play.
Yeah.
But systems and strategies would be the name of the board game, right?
Yeah. Exploring the systems and strategies. I will say this piece is born out of, you know, quarantine. I haven't really been in my studio that much. I haven't really been, you know, working in my practice as much as I would like to, and also as much as I think the world thinks artists are doing right now. Like I think they think all artists are just like laboring and toiling away in their studio, but really we're probably just as traumatized and vegged out as the rest of the world. So it's lots of little bits and studies and pieces and things that I've kind of worked on here and there, right? It's not, I don't know that I would call anything on this wall on its own a finished piece. But, you know, through all that play and arranging it in such a fashion, you know, they all connect to each other and they all talk to each other. And I think it's the interplay of all of my different ideas that really formulates a finished piece, not necessarily like, I'm rarely interested in the object, right? Like I'm rarely interested in the thing. I'm sometimes interested in the design of the thing, like how, you know, it's formatted on the page. That interests me. And I'm also interested in what the thing can communicate. So, you know, it's a painting, cool. It's paint on a canvas, yes, but how is this paint being used on the canvas to communicate the idea? And I think that's kind of, you know, my start point with a lot of these pieces is, you know, I have this idea that I want to communicate what are the tools, like what are the tools in the toolbox that I have to communicate them. But
the tool isn't necessarily this precious, rarefied object.
No, it rarely ever is. It rarely ever is. It's just honestly just fiddling, right? Like it's just fiddling, like giving yourself the space to just fiddle with the idea that you have and understand that it might not blossom into like this beautiful, fully realized thing. And it, you know, you might take it 3 or 4 steps further and then it just fizzles out, right? But that happens so often. That happens more often than I think I have a good idea, where just like things just don't click at all. Like they just don't make sense at all. And I just have to throw them by the wayside. But it's all those attempts that inform the next idea. So like, yeah, there were things that I thought would make it into the show, but ultimately, like practically, I didn't really figure out all the implications of its installation and things like that. So I had to walk away from them. But now, you know, I have all the materials to kind of figure out something different that I could do with it. Yeah.
Uh-oh, we lost some lighting guy. We lost some lights. So would it be like fair to say, so I'm just thinking of like creating, like making an analogy, because that's really all I teach is just good analogies. But so we could say like the Post-it note in this piece is, I mean, this is like a big Post-it note.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so this piece, I have phrases that like kind of live in my head and that will come and haunt me for a little while. So after all is one of those phrases, and I like to put it in different circumstances and situations just to kind of look at it visually and let it kind of tell me what it's like, what format it needs to be in, or like lead me to wherever it's trying to take me. After all is one of those phrases, and take care is another one of those phrases that kind of just haunts me.
Can I make a quick technical check?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure, I just realized, oh yeah, Adam's the co-host. Okay. Let's see. Oh. We're getting the questions. I just wanted to make
one
sure.
Question. Yeah. So Caitlin is asking, she says, you say you do not write down your thoughts, but you let yourself think on the idea. How long do you allow your mind to think about the idea?
Eternally. I lose a lot of things when I don't write them down. I'll be honest, like it's not a perfect system, but the reason why I don't like writing things down is I don't want to like commit it to the iteration it exists in my head, because I'm probably quite actively thinking about it. And I feel like the second I write it down on paper, the second like it comes out of the abstract and into the concrete, I like have to, and that's like a thing that I have to overcome in myself. But like I feel like once it's out of the abstract and into the concrete, like I have some obligation to create it as I have first manifested it. And that, you know, I have to grow out of that idea eventually at some point, because I lose a lot of good ideas because I don't write things down. So yeah, I just kind of, I think it gets to a point where I don't have any new sparks on it, but it still interests me, that I like actuate it. Like I actually make it. And, you know, like it's, sometimes it's like a really big idea. Like, you know, I want to make this 36 by 36 hand embroidered set of apostrophes to give to a friend or whatever. And I would like make it, like I would make the thing. I would not check my technique for embroidery. I would not check how to stretch a canvas. I would not check any of these things. I would just go all the way into it, because I feel like the practical learning in that situation is the most useful for me. Instead of, you know, not wasting my time, but instead of fiddling with a bunch of different tests and samples, if I just go ahead and make the big sample, then I can figure out all the issues of the big thing and work through it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's like, in terms of the idea of speech or a thought versus writing it down, there's like a purity to the thought.
Yeah.
And that it might change and develop. Yeah, that's like, that's very Greek philosophy. You know, they like had the idea that thought was, you know, that writing was somehow like you know, a lesser form of thinking.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you're able to control your mind and stuff like that. But you like the play and the alterations that we know the mind will create over time.
Yeah, I think, you know, like once I sketch out an idea or sort of like put it onto paper, I'm always making the revision that if I'm still thinking about it, I'm making the revision as it applies to the sketch that I've just made. And it's always like revising the sketch instead of like retuning the idea. So that's why I take that approach to it, more or less.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
But I mean, again, I do lose a lot of ideas, but I also have more ideas than I have time to execute. So it kind of like balances itself out.
And I feel like that's an automatic, that's my like filtration system for an idea. Like if it fell away, it sucked. It was a bad idea, you know?
Exactly.
So it's like this natural kind of first review of the idea
Yes,
is does it stay?
Stick 2 months later, am I still thinking
Right.
about this thing? I also like to tell other people the ideas that I'm having so that they can remind me about them at a later date.
Oh, that's good. I like
so
that.
I just use other people as my sketchbook.
Yeah.
I was using Matt earlier as a sketchbook.
Right.
Telling
People
him-
as sketchbooks. I love
just
that.
Telling if you have good friends who are interested in the same things that you are, or who kind of think in the same conceptual, abstract, or however your brain works. If you have friends like that, communication is always so interesting to me. And so hearing something back through the lens of someone else
Mm-hmm.
helps me kind of see new ideas and angles on things. So I like to tell people ideas and pose them as, what if it's a room this big and it has this piece over here, but this piece over here is spinning so slowly, I like talking things through like that with other people. So then, maybe 3 months later, if I see them again and they think about it and they can say, hey, whatever happened with that idea? And I can say, oh, I forgot about it completely.
Mm-hmm.
Or, it's super cool and I'm still working on it and I'd like to hear your feedback on this part now.
Right, right.
So people as sketchbooks, use your friends as sketchbooks.
Yeah. And did you get this sketchbook at Urban Outfitters or something like that? Oh,
sick burn.
Oh, a burn.
I can't burn him because I'm right next to him in lavender overalls and flannel. So
sweet.
So we're on the same vibe.
I like to tease Matt. He's a good sport. He's a good sport.
He's right for teasing.
We did have someone raise their hand. I'm not sure what that means or if they would like to.
Do they need to use the restroom? Hey-o, I'll be here all.
Oh, she says it's a good look though.
It's a good, there you go.
You look great, Matt. Any other questions?
So what if we move on to the mural?
Oh, yeah, let's talk about it. Okay, so once upon a time, when I was asked to do the show, I walked into the space and kind of got a feel for it. And I had several ideas for this back wall, but if you've ever visited the gallery, it's rectangular. So the distance between the entry space and the back wall is actually the shorter distance versus the other two side walls with the windows.
Right.
So it's got a shorter perspective situation, and I thought about the ideas more, and I thought, you know what? No, I'm gonna go all in, new piece. Don't know fully what it's going to look like, but I know that I want to take the phrase, what are you willing to do, and create a text mural around it, working within the phrase, what are you willing to do? So I knew that's what I wanted it to say. That was the hard point, was that I wanted it to say that. Everything else was up in the air until maybe the second day of install. I'm still living with, what it looks like on the wall, and we had the proportions taped out and everything. Still just trying to get familiar with it, working through two different versions of an idea. So I've gotten it down to two different approaches. One was more graphically inclined and one was more dependent on the color pink. Went with the one more dependent on the color pink because it's a very pink show. So why not lean all the way into the pink? From there, I made a couple plans there's a picture posted on Instagram. I just kind of sculpted out the shapes in it, and that was really more for my own mindset. So I wouldn't fatigue trying to cover this entire wall with text. It's more, just creating visual breaks from my hand. And you can kind of see the remnants of it with both the way the tape accepted the ink and sort of the shapes that my handwriting made if you look really, really hard at it. Finished it all up, came back and outlined my stencil in neon pink so you can really see the language. There were lots of unexpecteds, right? There were so many unexpecteds that happened while I was working on this. I had familiarized myself with the marker that I was using, but never on this level of texture, right? So there's some things you can sort of predict, and there's some things that you're just going in blind with it. So I knew that it would drip some, but I wasn't anticipating it to drip this much, right? And that was something I learned within the first 30 seconds of this happening. And at that moment, you have to make a decision, right? Are you leaning into what is obviously happening, or are you going to try to overcorrect it for the entire time you're working on it?
And that's not a decision, that's always a decision you need to make when making work, not just because you're doing a painting in the gallery.
Right. Yeah. It's like, all right, so this is what it is. This is what it wants to do. Can we fold it into the concept and make it work that way? Or do we need to
go home and cry?
Right.
No.
Yeah.
Start over. Yeah.
You need to go home, take a breather, take a 5-minute cry break, and plow right back into it. So we plowed back into it and just leaned into the drips and let that incorporate its way into the design. And my favorite thing, it did lots of things, you know, creating these very dramatic vertical lines pouring down, kind of like pillars, kind of like creepy tentacles. Kind of reminds me of Spanish moss a little, but in like a weird horror situation.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like psychedelic Spanish moss.
Yeah, like just this weird trippy experience you're having, like we're all melting together here in this world.
And it does work nicely. It's a line variation in the opposite direction from the text, right?
Yeah,
so we're
yeah, it's very, you know, I went home, thought about it some more. I was like, oh, it's really like those Scientology pieces where he was getting real drippy.
Right.
And like really aggressive with his washes and things. And that made me feel better.
But I like that in this, you know, in the sense of Cy Twombly's work and your work, because it gives us this, you know, it's not, I was talking to the mixed media class about this, a brushstroke has this ability to carry time with it, right?
Yeah,
so it's the drip is giving that particular piece of text or cursive this place and time, right, on the piece.
Yes. Absolutely. You know, drips happen after your hand leaves the page. Like they continue on beyond your existence, which is really fun to think about, especially with written text, because it continues on beyond the time you wrote it, right?
Right. Yeah.
It is artifact for others to find and discover.
Like which we didn't talk about last time, but the idea of like a palimpsest. Are you familiar with that? Like,
no.
Like a wax, like the early wax writing tablets that they would just write over top of. So they're like magnifying these things to find, you know, archaeologically, like Archimedes' palimpsest is a famous one, and it was, you know, mathematical formulas buried underneath all this other text, grocery lists, things like that.
So they just melt it down?
Right. So it was pre-paper, right? Or it's like a paper wax kind of thing, but the idea is that you could erase it and write over top. But yeah, so that's how I see a lot of your work, like, is this idea of the palimpsest, where, you know, especially in this piece, the mark, the way the mark is in its time and space is part of this physical space that we're seeing. Yeah.
And I mean, so there's the other artifact, right? Like, wall texture was a new thing for this application of the marker that I was using. So I'm learning about, you know, the viscosity of the ink in the marker and how it plays with the wall texture and how the pigment within the ink in the marker settles out in different ways. So I'm learning all this as it's happening. But I think the happiest of accidents is just how the text became integrated within the entire mural. It was originally intended to be just a full resist, right? Like it was just meant to be these hollow letters on this wall of a lot, bringing you to focus on the two different elements. But it bled, right? Like all these drips bled in and just sort of gives the element of you can't tell me what to do, which, you know, I love encountering. There's but two things you can do here, right? You can go home and cry, or you can get glad about it, or figure out how to, you know, integrate it again into the concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what about the text itself? Renee. Why this question?
It's so weird to have people ask me that because it's like, yeah, why not? Why not? It's just it's a beautiful question for right now, right? What are you willing to do? Full stop. Like, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do today? What are you willing to do for me? What are you willing to do for you? What are you willing to do to help your neighbor, right? Like, it's a great question, I think, to ask yourself and others, like just the verb will, like, what are you willing to? I need you to willingly help others, or I don't know. It's a question that I've asked in other pieces. It's been on mirrors before. I just think it's a really, really great moment for reflection, right? Like, to ask yourself, what are you willing to do? It's a self-check. That's the answer. It's a self-check. That is the phrase that I kind of use to check myself more. The more and more I think about like the times it occurs, it's kind of something I ask myself, and I'm like, oh, that's a great question to ask other people. Like, what are you willing to do?
So as opposed to like the text on the wall or on the window, sorry,
Yeah.
which to me, I mean, you kind of talked about it before, but you know, you're the idea with that is that you're kind of more critical, and this is kind of an apathy that you don't kind of endorse, or maybe I'm reading into it. But then this is something, this as a question is much more of an affirmation, much more positive. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair read. I think, you know, it is what it is, and it will be what it will be are two declarative statements, right? Like, I hate it, but I absolutely hate it, but it is what it is. Yes. That's,
Oh, so yeah, there's redundancy there. Yeah.
yeah, like, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. Yep. And it will be what it will be because the future is, it will be what it will be in the future because that's what it will be in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I like repeating, I like the visual repetition around surrounding the word what.
Mm-hmm.
This one's kind of like somewhere between concept and visual application for me in my enjoyment of the piece. But yeah, if you take the two windows and the wall piece and all as one thing, you know, what are you willing to do to affect what it is?
And what it will be.
What are you willing to do to affect what it will be?
Nice.
Right? So these are great questions to, the whole show is just a mind puzzle for whoever is willing to untangle it, right?
Or I see it like you know, a kind of you know, concrete poetry exercise. Like I can stitch together my own phrases or prose.
It's great that you say that. I have been lately with one of my good friends, Amy Bagwell. We've kind of back and forth been playing with this idea of like word collages and like breaking apart other text so that it reads at the same time. It reads, I guess, top to bottom.
Mm-hmm.
In a certain layout, but you can also break it apart more. So the original idea was that this would be separated so that you could read it as what are you willing to do, but also what to do are you willing? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Playing with these sort of collages. I couldn't really get it to work quite the way I wanted, but I think I like it better here.
No, but like I see like arranging the text to break the kind of left to right.
Yeah.
So then you're spacing, but I mean, I still think that's the case. What, you know, I kept reading it like, what are you to do?
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I totally see that in the arrangement.
Yeah, so we back and forth, we kind of play around with this idea of just like how to break apart this one phrase so that it reads and it reads.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fun, and so I took inspiration from her when like plotting what I had.
And Amy does the like the poetry around uptown that's on the side of buildings.
Yeah,
she organized that.
Poems.
Yeah, wall
She
poems.
Wall poems.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you see poetry out and about in Charlotte, painted on the wall, thank Amy Bagwell.
Yeah.
And then thank her to her face so she can really feel all the love, but safely from 6 feet away.
Right. For now.
Wait till it's safe. But yeah, that's the thoughts. Those are the thoughts that kind of went into it. It was definitely learning from a series of messes, right?
Well, your system, right? The system, you had the idea, right?
Yes.
And then you developed an approach that is based in layers.
Yes.
Which is what I mean, I identify a lot with that in my own work. And whether it's this is in layers to me. The
Yes.
mirrors are in layers, although it's a little, it's less congested than that.
Yeah.
But this is a system of layers that you work through, in different strategies. And then, as it was being recorded, right, and put down, you had to make decisions.
You gotta make decisions.
And I think with the first layer of tape that you had, that, really we don't see many remnants of it.
Mm-hmm.
That was, you made a decision on that, not to follow that exactly, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of like, so then you kind of worked around that. Whereas the reticulation inside the vinyl, that was an effect, you could have been over the last few days since we last saw you painting that gray again, right? Like the wall, but
Theoretically, yeah.
yeah, but I think it looks great. And so, you're making these decisions based on, each of these strategies. How does the strategy?
Yeah, I mean, a part of it is just making or letting the work make itself, right?
Mhm.
Like it's that surrender that I was talking about. Like I am surrendering to whatever is going to happen in this process, and that like it's scary sometimes, and it's very much a mindset that you have to have when you're going into it. Like you have to be willing to just accept whatever is going to be given to you out of the work that you are making. Like you just have to let go. And wanting to control things is an approach to art. Like it is an approach, like excise, extreme precision and control. And then,
Yeah, but is it a cool approach?
is it fun?
Is it
though?
fun?
Is it fun though? No, I mean there's lots of ways to approach work,
Absolutely.
and I think it's really important to explore all of the approaches, even the ones that initially don't interest you, because I think that there's something you can learn from it.
Mm-hmm,
Even
absolutely.
if it's I definitely absolutely hate this and will never do it again. Like you know what I mean? Like to me that's worth finding out.
Yeah,
To me that's worth finding out because it's all tools in the toolbox for me. Like I guess I am a conceptual artist in that the answer result or like the piece is a question, right? Like I'm not presenting any of these things as fully resolved, unarguable, unboundable ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
You are welcome to come to me at any point in time and say, no. And I'd say, all right, let's talk about it. Why not? I lost my train of thought in that statement.
Well, you're talking about what the artwork, just like you said at the beginning, really, the artwork as presented, is a living thing. Yeah.
You gotta let it make itself sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's a process of surrender, and sometimes we want to be control freaks about the work that we're making because we have a really great idea and we want to get it as close as possible. But I highly recommend you let go of that idea of that from brain to page. There's going to be a lot of translation error. Like there's going to be a lot of things that change from your head to the paper, and I think it's really important to be accepting of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not working out exactly as you planned, is there something that you can do with what you have so far rather than turning around and starting over? Gems of wisdom.
Gems of wisdom.
Any other questions? Is Adam still alive?
I think
I'm
so.
here. No other questions yet.
Do people have questions for me?
Oh, I'm sure there are some questions.
I'll just sit here and ask questions. Oh. Or I can tell you all the fun things about being an artist in Charlotte. I guess I could talk about that.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
So we live in Charlotte. It's a city, and under normal circumstances, there are several opportunities to get out and see, new upcoming shows. COVID has made things weird, of course, because, gathering's not ideal, and so, we're trying to figure out how to do things. Like, I work very closely with Goodyear Arts. I'm their collective manager as well as sales manager. We've been down for a while. Just, we just want to take as many precautions as we can. Goodyear's doing like lots of different alternative programming. Like, we're doing outdoor events. We did a drive-through exhibition, things of that nature. But the Charlotte art scene in general is honestly a great community to be a part of. You just gotta get into it, right? Like, you just gotta go out and meet people and become a part of it. And that's the best way to, what is a collection manager? So talk a little bit more about the way Goodyear Arts is structured. It's a residency program that is supported by its alumni, who we call the collective. So the collective is just people who have gone through the program before and are in exchange for their support of the program, meaning the residency and the gallery space. In exchange, we are afforded studio space. And so as collective manager, it is my responsibility to stay on top of the collective and make sure that we are supporting the Goodyear program as best as we can. Oh, wow. All right. Hello. Geez. I've read that you said Jenny Holzer is one of your main influences, which is evident in your work and obsession with words. Adam, did you write this? Did you write this, Adam?
No, not coming from me.
This is someone I've talked to before, I feel like. Jenny Holzer famously prefers to use the words of others. How did you choose? Do you consider taking her approach in the future of your work? So there are opportunities for me to use the language of others, but usually when I do that, it's more in a legible format, less like this and more like you can read it. Usually when I'm appropriating language, it's because what it says is important to the concept I'm trying to complete. Yeah, I mean, I yo-yo back and forth. It really just depends on the idea that I have and how it, strikes me and moves me into, what I make. The words in my work. Can everyone read this, or am I just reading this? No one? Just us? Okay. The words in your work are very emotive and poetic. Even within them, you cite the likes of E.E. Cummings and Ezra Pound, who are legendary wordsmiths. Your writing style even comes off as an evolution of the former. But there's also an existential and or nihilistic edge to it. It sounds like you may even be dealing with depression. Do you agree with this? And do you think that feeling things so strongly is a side effect of being an artist or just a coping mechanism for creative types? Depression, absolutely. Like, who isn't? Yeah, that's part of my process, I think, is finding the balance between fluctuating, like finding the balance between everything is trash and I am a good person and I can affect good in the world. So as far as me feeling things very strongly, I think it's part of who I am personally, and maybe that's what draws me to being an artist. I don't know that it is a side effect. I think maybe artists just feel more and like they resonate with the world around them more, and that's what drives them to be creative in the ways they affect change on it. So maybe it's that. Thank you for saying that I use words nicely. I really like playing with language. Like, that's really just fun for me. We all are so blessed to have this language that we can use to communicate with each other. And I think it's amazing that I can say words right now and have a group of people understand the thoughts that I'm having. And it's not like that everywhere, right? Like if I went to Germany and was speaking English, a lot of people might understand me. A lot of people would say, I have no idea what she's talking about, and push me out of the way. So to be to have the opportunity to be surrounded by people who I can talk to that understand what I say. And I know that's like a very kind of basic thing, but it's also a privilege I think we take, advantage of a lot. Is great. And I like that. I like that I am where I can communicate. Bottom line. Okay. I have a couple of pieces of what looks like thrift store art scrawled on top with red lipstick. One says, if I'm from the hood, why is that a bad thing? And the other, I can't see the rest of that question. Yes, those pieces. I can't see the rest of that question, but they are red oil stick, not lipstick. There's lots of oil stick. I think there's something powerful about the reclamation of older pieces with new language, contemporary language. The piece that says, if I'm from the hood, why is that a bad thing? Was language I collected from an artist lecture maybe like 5 years ago. There was a woman just discussing about the politics of locality. So if you live in this part of town, the implications of your behaviors because you're from that part of town and not the other part of town was really interesting to me. And it's just like a very, very strong phrase. So to reclaim that over an older image that is used as decor and, force it to reckon with this really tough, difficult question for some. And I mean, I don't know if there is an answer, but, it's something to ponder. If I am from the hood, why is that a bad thing? So there's like that duality there.
Renee, we do have one question in chat.
Oh yeah.
We can get to. Melanie asks, can you talk about your experience in getting gallery spaces in Charlotte? Did it take a long time to get in the swing of it, or was it easy for you?
So I have been showing my work in exhibition spaces since sophomore year in college. As a sophomore, I was having exhibitions, and so there's a lot of practice that I've gained over the years of just, understanding how to write a correct, show brief or explanation of idea to the gallery, and just learning how to form those relations. As far as it's happening, here in Charlotte, just a lot of networking and being, really good supporters of the community. I'm excited to see work anywhere. Even if it's not mine, even if, in the space, there's no hope that it would ever be mine because it's too elite or too prestigious or whatever my brain is perceiving it as, that's not necessarily a reality. I just like seeing work and I like being in spaces with work. So I just go and visit galleries frequently. And, I've made friends with curators and directors and things of that nature just by being a part of the community. So I think in order to, make space for your work and, get yourself ready to make your work enter a space, you have to be a part of that space first. So I think it's really important to build up community and, build yourself into the community before you, have greater ease with acquiring gallery space, which is unfortunate because, the old adage is it's not what you know, but who you know. But who you know really helps you become, an incredible person, right? Because you get to learn from all these people. So that was my entry point, was just nose to the grindstone, being a plague upon all these places and making sure that they knew that I was, always available to help if I could. I don't know if that answered the question. Did that answer the question? Ooh, okay. Frivolity and unction article. Oh, why did I pick frivolity and unction? So it's been a while since I've read it, but I think it's important for everyone to read because of its perspective on the art world. Yeah, it's been a minute. It really has been a minute, but it's a great read. It just it just talks about commodity, right?
Right, you were talking about when we talked about selecting that essay, you were particularly interested in the idea of making, this distinction of making art as commodity versus art as experience.
So what we were yelling about this morning. Yeah, making art as experience versus art as commodity. Like, the answer is always capitalism, right? Like, we're always doing these things because at the end of the day, we need to make money and we need that money to survive.
And I mean, one of the things that we talked about before your show opened and we were talking about meeting with the class is the idea of how that confuses art making, that it going towards it as a commodity, as a capitalist venture is often not the success, not the most successful path or not the easiest path.
Right, yeah, we were talking about the big scary thread piece that you have to come see in person. It is worth monetarily, if you eliminate all the manipulation I've done to it, it is worth a spool of thread, some nails, paper, and push pins, right? Like, that's what it's worth. And then we have to add in the value of the idea and the value of the labor and the value of all these other things, but its ultimate value, I think, is intellectual and not necessarily like in dollars and cents, and not as a commodity. It's as a think piece. And so it's really good to like explore that dichotomy, like, what is doing it for the money or doing it for the reward of something versus doing it for the interest of the question. So something to think about. Malik, as a Black artist myself, I've thought about how the Black experience really depends many external factors and how my experience may not be the same as another's, but I'm reminded by Dr. King's quote, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." Do you think people who have not experienced the same struggle should still speak up for it through their art, even though others could say that they have no right since they have not experienced it themselves? Ooh, big question. I would say that every artist is entitled to express their experience. Every artist is entitled to express their experience, full stop, right? Like, everyone is entitled to their feelings about the things that have happened to them. Is it, let's see, people who have not experienced the same struggle should still speak up for it through their art. I don't know that they necessarily have to speak up for it through their art. They can still speak up for it. I think, like, making art with the intent to advocate for justice is good, but I think it's a different kind of art. Thinking this through. This is a big question. I don't know. I mean, are you a political artist? Like, is that your medium? Is political commentary or social justice the medium in which you frequently work, or is this something that you are recently feeling compelled to do? Right? It's really about introspection, I think, at this point, and discovering the true intent behind making the work. Like, is it because you feel it is important that this message is communicated, period? Or is it important that the message is communicated, not necessarily coming from you, right? Like, these are all questions that you have to sit and think about. And I don't know that I can give you like a definitive answer. it's muddy, it's messy. It gets really complicated because, are you subtracting from the voices of others by raising yours, or are you helping by raising a voice, period? I don't know. That's a bigger question than what I can answer, I think. But a good question nonetheless. I would say follow your heart, but think with your head. That's great general advice. That's blanket advice right there. Any other questions? What time are we wrapping this up at?
Oh, we can wrap it up soon.
Okay. I mean, I'm here to hang, but totally here to hang. If anyone wants to ask me anything else.
Maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe we exhausted this topic a bit, but maybe talking a little bit more about your role as an artist in Charlotte specifically, and
Oh,
kind of what you're involved with.
what am I involved with, man?
Other projects you're working on?
Other projects I'm working on. That's not a plug for Goodyear. I currently have work hanging at Free Range Brewing as a part of a joint show with artist D'Angelo Dia. It's called Our Mistake. I also have work hanging currently in the Living Museum Uptown as part of their, I do not remember the title of the show, but it is surrounded by the idea of voting. So I'm going to call it the Vote Show. I'm blanking on the title. Goodyear is prepping for their fundraiser October 24th. That's going on. I can't really say too much about that, but save the date if you are interested in going to a safe, socially distanced art experience. Adam, you got to ask me a more specific question.
Well, how about we shift gears a little bit? What if you talk a little bit about, kind of to wrap all this up, a little bit about your experience in your BFA program and your experience as a student working toward that BFA.
Oh, my college days. Yeah, I can talk about college all day long. I loved college. It was 5 years ago, or I started it 10 years ago, graduated 5 years ago. It was a great time. I think so. I did my freshman year at Savannah College of Art and Design in Savannah. I learned a lot about what is and is not for me. I thought going to art school would be like this great collaborative experience where I was co-work, just like working with all these different people from all over the place on all these different ideas. And I just didn't have that experience there. And I realized I didn't need to pay for art school to have such a communal experience. So I transferred to App State where I finished my BFA. It's a great program. But I think, in college, there were two things that I really focused on learning, and I focused on learning how to articulate my ideas, like how to support the concepts that I was playing with, like really being able to back them up with the words to prove that there is thought behind it. Like there are things that I'm trying to communicate and execute. It's not just haphazard, because sometimes my execution was a little haphazard, but that was part of it. I learned that, and I learned a lot about exhibitions. So to me, the most important thing about being a practicing artist is being able to get your work on the walls, quite literally, right? Like it can't be seen unless it's hanging in the gallery, or the optimal space to see it is hanging in a gallery, or hanging, period. So I spent, and I still spend a lot of time just conceptualizing my pieces. Like once I make it to the idea stage and I start to see what it looks like on a wall, I have to figure out how it hangs before I do anything else, right? Like, because if I can't get it to sit on the wall, then what am I doing? Like what good is it, right? Or how it stands on the floor, or how, like how is the viewer meant to interact with it, I think is a lot of what I was focusing on in school. But I also had classes that helped me figure that out. So I took an exhibitions practicum class. I don't know, do we have that here? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Add that. If that is a class here, or if that sounds like a class here, I highly recommend you take it. Yeah, and then I volunteered in the on-campus gallery, which was one big one instead of a bunch of smaller ones. But I volunteered there and, you know, worked with visiting artists and helped them install their work and them install their shows. And I think I took the opportunity of college to learn as much practical knowledge as I could while still having fun making work. And I think it's really important to know, you know, how to do both. You know, you'll hear a lot of artists talk about how they have to run themselves as a business. It's true, it's very annoying, but being able to make good decisions just like within the creation of my work really helps me manage myself as an artist. Because, you know, in college you learn like there are 24 hours in a day, right? And what you can do with those 24 hours and what's a feasible amount of work to give yourself for a project. And then, you know, like, how soon do you need to start working on something for it to be ready by this time? Okay, how much money do you have right now? How much money can you spend on this idea? All right, is there any room in the budget, you know, if something goes wrong? You know, like all these things are parts of managing yourself as an artist and also as a business, and it's not particularly fun, but you learn how to do it if this is really what you're interested in doing.